Welcome to a live YouTube edition of Beyond the Arc. John Gonzalez and Sam Quinn here. Bill Reiter will be along in just a moment following Team USA. Sam, what do we call this? Dicey win over Serbia. They beat Serbia 95-91. They were down 17, Sam. I don't know about you. I don't have any pearls, but I was going to call around, ask the neighbors because I needed something to clutch. I thought they were going down. And then in the fourth quarter, Serbia shot the lights out in the first three quarters. They made all 15 of the threes in the first three quarters. And then in the fourth quarter, they went cold and Team USA mounted this comeback. But that was dodgy.
I was already starting to get my Redeem Team 2 merch ready for 2028. Like, it felt so fitting, right? Like 2004, 20 years later, we lose, we get bronze. LeBron loses a 19-year-old, then he loses a 39-year-old. Like, the stories were writing themselves, but thankfully Team USA comes through in the end. And I'm overwhelmed right now. I have to catch my breath, right? Like, what were they down in the fourth? Was it like 13, 15 in the fourth alone? I mean,
yeah, that's 13, I believe, going into the fourth quarter.
That's the best basketball game I've watched at any level in several years, right? Like, you could maybe go back to the 2016 NBA Finals Game 7. Just when you talk about the stars at play, like, I don't want to throw around the legacy word, but like, this was a legacy game for a lot of players on both sides. When you factor in the stakes, the quality of the game, the quality of the players, I'm just speechless right now. That's one of the best basketball games I've ever watched.
Well, that was for being speechless. You had a lot of good things to say there.
We're never
so that was
truly
very impressive.
Speechless in this business, are we?
No, that's true. We get paid not to be speechless. But I'm with you. Like, I'm sitting there going to the fourth quarter going, we have a Beyond the Arc text chain that we'll have to add you to, me and Bill and Ashley and our producer, Aaron. And I thought because it was a 40-minute game that they were just going to run out of time. I expected that they would tighten up the margin, but it just felt like this entire game, you're waiting for them to snap out of their funk and start playing. Really for the entire game, it was Steph and it was Embiid. And then like everybody else was super late to the party. And I just didn't think that they were going to have enough time to figure this out. But that was, I don't even know where you want to start here. Do you want to start with Steph? Do you want to start with Embiid? Do you want to start with how many guys, the legacies that you said that were affected by this? Because I was writing down, oh man, do we start with blaming Kerr? Do we start with blaming LeBron? Like, who we're going to blame? But which way do you want to start here?
I think we have to start with Steph. I mean, I'm looking back now in my mind on the biggest games of Stephen Curry's career. I think you could argue that this one was as high as number 2. The 2022 Finals Game 4 is probably like the biggest single game that defines Stephen Curry's career. This might be second. I mean, like, remember, what was it, a week ago I think it was after the Puerto Rico game or the South Sudan game, we were on with Brad Botkin and he was saying,
yes,
like,
I remember that. Where's Brad?
Play Stephen Curry because he looked that bad for a lot of this tournament. It makes 9 threes. He scored, I think it was 20 of the first 40 for Team USA. He was basically the only American player who was scoring in the first half with any degree of consistency. He was also like really the only player, at least early on, who had any gravity. Like, Team USA wasn't stressing out the Serbia defense except for Steph when he got hot. Yes. Steph really didn't have that many, like, when you think of the biggest shots of Steph's career, the biggest games of his career, he's weird in that the first shot that comes to mind for a lot of people is a regular season shot. It's that Oklahoma City shot in 2016. We don't think of like any specific marquee moments for Steph in the way that we do for most players of his caliber. Well, now he has on the biggest stage. Obviously, he's won 4 championships. He had that huge game against Boston in 2022. But like, this is a marquee moment for Stephen Curry. I didn't think we were getting any more of those, frankly, at this point. He's 36, 37 now? I thought we were done getting moments like this out of Stephen Curry. I'm going to say pleasantly surprised that I was wrong there.
Pleasantly surprised is about right. Yes. For all of our BTA loyal listeners who caught Brad Bodkin's rant after South Sudan, he was talking about how, Steph hasn't really had as many clutch moments as you would otherwise expect. You and I, despite the fact that we are not Warriors fans, Brad is, our producer Aaron is, we were left to defend Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time, who just hadn't been shooting well. And our basic takeaway was, he's Steph. Eventually those shots are going to fall. Today was that day. He went 12 for 19 from the floor. He got 14 threes up and he had 9 of them. And this was one of those situations where they needed every bit of that. And there were moments, and I think it contributed to them playing from behind for a lot of it, where, he was super hot, right? And then all of a sudden Kerr sat him. And producer Aaron lost his mind and was like, this isn't hard. Here's the guys who should be out there. I quibbled a little bit with who he was saying because I was thinking that I would have swapped out Booker for Derek White earlier because I thought that they needed more perimeter defense because Serbia was shooting the lights out. And like, I wanted to see more lockdown defender, two of them at least with Drew Holiday out there. But they needed every ounce of Steph Curry front to back today. Otherwise, they're playing in the bronze medal game.
Yeah, I'm just going back to Kerr for a second. They played 10 players even in the second half, right? Like doing it in the first half, I kind of get you're feeling out the game. It just, all of this entire tournament, we've been talking about how Steve Kerr hasn't settled on a specific lineup. We don't really know who he's trusting. You know, there are different players getting DNPs in each game. Even now in what was the biggest game of the tournament, ultimately probably will, right? Like, I don't think that we're going to have a game like this against France in the gold medal game. Steve Kerr never quite figured out who his guys were. And you're right, it was a little strange that he closed with Devin Booker. And Devin Booker didn't hurt them, but it did feel a little out of place when you're watching this like huge moment with these 4 MVPs and LeBron and Steph and Durant and Embiid are all like having these legacy moments. And Booker's just kind of there and he's not hurting, but he's not doing too much to help either.
He hit that one like knockdown wide open 3, which they needed. But yeah, I was just like, all right, well, look, if you're not going to, he only took 2 threes tonight, Devin Booker. So if you're not going to have him jacking up threes, why is he out there? Put Derek White out there to play defense. So that was a little surprising for me. Also surprising for me, and I thought that this really contributed also to their deficit. Kevin Durant only had 1 shot in the first half. It was like, to your point about Steve Kerr trying to figure it out. Yeah, I get that he's got a lot of guys here. All of a sudden now I've been Kerr-pilled by producer Aaron, where I'm like, maybe he's not as good as I think he is.
That was a really bad Kerr game, and we can get into that if you want. That was a bad
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should get into it because, you know, Aaron and a lot of people said it's not that hard. You should have LeBron and KD and Steph on the floor at all times. I would argue because of the way that Embiid played, you can't play him the entire game, but because of the way that Embiid played today, and he was exceptional today, and I want to get into that as well. I would have had Embiid out there as well, and then you rotate through with your 5th guy. But yeah, the Kerr rotations today and the decision making today, when Steph was going off and all of a sudden you decide to sit him, it was very strange to me. I didn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, the rotations made very little sense to me. I was surprised when they were down at halftime that Durant didn't start the second half, right?
Yeah.
Like, we knew Durant was going to play most of the second half. I thought it was a little strange to start Booker over him. The drop coverage was really messy. I thought like a lot of why this game was as close as it was 3-point variance, right? It was just Serbia making a lot of open shots. Well, a lot of those open shots are just coming from the fact that they can't defend Jokic straight up. A big change as the game progressed was like Serbia just stopped making open threes at the same rate. As you mentioned earlier on, they didn't make a 3 in the 4th quarter, but like, if you're getting killed from deep, you kind of just have to play Jokic straight up and say, like, look, if he's going to score 40, we'll lose that way. We can't just keep giving away open 3 after open 3 after open 3. I just thought all around this was a really messy Steve Kerr game, schematically, rotation-wise. Like, Jason Tatum was like the story for a part of this game. We're for the second time now, Jason Tatum didn't play against Serbia, and there was like a big Twitter outcry of like, we're doing this again. That's like 9th on my list right now of concerns I have with Steve Kerr after that game. They won because they're the more talented team and the shooting variance worked out in the end. But yeah, like they could have lost that game very easily and Steve Kerr would have been at the top of my blame list.
Oh, absolutely top of the blame list. We want to thank everybody who's joining us live on YouTube right now. We have a lot of comments coming in. You can leave us a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, do all that stuff. Abby Jackson all over the chat with us right now, saying exactly what you just said, that Steve Kerr definitely mismanaged the game. I'm going to disagree with both you and Abby, though, because she called out, where was Jason Tatum? I only wanted Jason Tatum to play if they ended up losing this game, just because then I didn't want Jason Tatum to be like, don't blame me. I didn't even get in. I wanted him to get into this game or not get into this game if they wanted. So I'm actually quite pleased that Jason Tatum didn't see any minutes in this game. It is a little inexplicable, though, if I'm being honest, if I'm taking off my Philadelphia hater hat and just talking about it from a basketball analytics or analyst standpoint. Like, this guy is one of the best players in the world. I get why they're not playing Tyrese Halliburton. It's harder for me to parse why Jason Tatum's not getting any run.
I'm with you. Like, I think the problem was Steve Kerr went a little too guard heavy in this game, and I would have been fine with that if he'd known who he trusted. But like, there was a little bit of Devin Booker here, and a little bit of Edwards there, and a little bit of Derek White. Like, he never quite figured out. And I guess Booker closing the game says that Booker was his choice in the end, and Booker did start as well. But it never felt like he settled on these are the guards that I trust. And if that's going to be the case, I don't know why you don't at least try Tatum out. It made sense when you were winning the first game by 26 against Serbia. I probably would have given him a chance in the third quarter. It didn't make a huge difference. I get why you didn't. This is a guard heavy team. If you want to have, like, if you want to defend these Serbia shooters, it probably makes more sense to have guys that are going to be more comfortable chasing them around screens than somebody like Tatum, who's like better if he's getting switched onto Jokic, but in a perfect world, you're not switching him onto Jokic. So I understood Tatum not playing. Ironically, I did have the thought especially in the first quarter when Curry was the only one who was scoring, maybe Haliburton would have made some sense then, because Serbia, like, why Team USA struggled so much offensively in the first half. Serbia never played any zone in this tournament, and then all of a sudden they play zone against Team USA in this game. There's a reason teams don't play zone that much, right? Like, if you look at the most used zone teams in the NBA, it's 10%, it's 15%. It's almost always the Miami Heat. They use it as like a change of pace weapon, right? It throws you off because you're not used to seeing it much. The ways to beat zone are deep shooting so you can like space the zone out, or play fast, get them unorganized, that sort of play. And that's what Tyrese Haliburton does best. So I was sort of thinking in the first half, like, maybe this is the moment for Haliburton, because Curry was the only guy who was scoring, and not coincidentally, Curry is the best shooter on the team. But ultimately, like, you have 12 stars on the team. Somebody is going to have to sit. We've been saying that this whole tournament. I see why it was Tatum. I probably would have tried him out at some point in this game. It's just the rotation is not the thing at the top of my concern with Kerr. It was really just letting Serbia get 3 after 3 after 3 off with no resistance.
I think it never fails to amuse me and also confuse me that NBA players like pretty much short circuit every time they see a zone. And I get you that, you know, it's mostly Miami, and as producer Aaron points out, wherever Nick Nurse is, that'll deploy that just as like a trick, but it works. And I want to just quickly here, I want to apologize to my BTA co-host, Ashley Nicole Moss, who's not on the show right now, who on multiple shows had said, hey, you know, there's this conspiracy theory out there that in the first 2 games, Serbia wasn't so much sandbagging as they were holding back some stuff. They weren't showing certain looks, and they were saving certain looks for the knockout stage game if and when they ended up running into Team USA. And I laughed, and I was like, this is ridiculous. They're going to win by 20. Team USA is the better team. They don't have enough pieces, Serbia, to really compete with them. And Ashley's like, look, there's like people actually talking about this. She was right. They threw a zone at them that they hadn't seen, and for 3 quarters, it absolutely befuddled them. But they get through. They win this game. Escapes is right. You see the Chiron at the bottom here, where they win by 4 points. Moving forward against France on Saturday in the gold medal game, do they have to start KD? Like, does he have to switch it up and just go with the good guys that you know are going to play at both ends other than Steph?
I would, purely because it feels like they found, I don't want to say found an identity late in this game against Serbia, but when you so definitively prove to your entire roster, these are the guys that I trust, it makes sense to start those guys in the gold medal game. Now, look, I'm going to be honest. I don't think that the gold medal game is going to be nearly as close as this one was, just because I don't think France is going to make half of their threes, and they don't have somebody who's going to command the same attention defensively that Jokic did. So ultimately, I think they're going to be fine, whatever they do against France. I think this was probably the gold medal game, at least functionally, but I probably would start Durant just because Durant's one of your 5 best players, and you should probably start your 5 best players.
We should probably start him. We're starting our third starter as well.
I just popped up.
Just popped up. Here comes our NBA insider, Bill Reiter, who was doing HQ duty. Bill, we're just going to backtrack with you here for a second. We started the show like just blown away. Like, what was your top line takeaway from this? Because we were texting in our chain, like, it feels like they're going to run out of time. Are they going to be able to pull this off? I'm shocked, 1, that they were in that spot, and 2, that they mounted a comeback down as much as 17 and 13 going into the fourth quarter.
So a few things I'll just throw at you. I don't know what you guys have hit, but for me, it crystallized. And we talked about this beforehand, John, sort of if Serbia somehow wins, it elevates. It just, I think, crystallizes the greatness of Nikola Jokic, as dumb as that sounds when we said it before. And they lost, and it still crystallized it. And I think, Sam, you were just talking about it, the gravity that Jokic commands against a team of NBA superstars, surrounded by guys who are not superstars, with all respect to Bogdanovic next to him. And the fact it's the same exact equation, that they have to double him, that he controls the tempo no matter what's going on, that he creates open shots for all of us. It's just how remarkable Jokic is, point number one. I know we knew it, but it's a different level seeing him do it with the Serbian team than a bunch of Nuggets players that maybe even Jamal Murray we've given a little too much credence to at the level they play. Maybe it's a Jokic situation. And the other is, Sam, tell me if I'm a bad American, because I'm glad USA won. I kind of feel bad for Serbia. That's one of the most heartbreaking losses I've ever seen, because they should. And then they had it. And then the magic shooting shoes or the magic pixie dust, and you're going to revert to the mean. And if the games were 30, if it was a 34-minute game instead of a 40-minute game, right? Shaving 8 minutes wasn't enough. And that's the other takeaway, is just USA. I don't think we didn't come out of the gate very strong. I know we had three guys who played individually outstanding games in Embiid. I'm sorry, Joel, sort of. LeBron was amazing, triple-double, and Steph. But we didn't look like a team, and it just doesn't matter, because unless the games are 22 minutes long, even when Serbia plays basically a perfect 85% of the game with the best player on earth, you can't beat us. Those are my takeaways.
I want to touch on something you just said, where we didn't look like a team. You're right. This does crystallize how great Jokic is, because Jokic's mere presence can make anybody look like a team. And Team USA didn't have anybody like that. I say pretty frequently, I think Manu Ginobili's gold medal in 2004 is probably the single most significant championship that any professional basketball player has ever won, because nobody else had beaten NBA players, right? Nobody else had ever won gold at an Olympics against NBA players. But that was against a very flawed Team USA team. This was the A team. This was LeBron and Steph and Durant. This was we had everybody, and Jokic still almost beat us. If he pulled it off, we'd have to start having some very difficult conversations about where do we rank him all time? Where does this performance fall?
Dude,
we still should have those conversations.
I love that. That's the exact sort of thing we talked before the show is, had he, even without beating them, but had he beaten them, it's like, is he a top 5 player? How am I supposed to compare him to Steph Curry? I would have counted, Sam and John, this gold medal as 2 championships if Serbia won it. If you're a member of Team USA, it counts as a third of it, not even that, a fifth of a title, per Devin Booker's point. But I'm with you. With Jokic, that's the thing, is I know I should root for USA because I'm from this country and I love America. I sort of wanted Serbia to win because I love greatness. And had it happened and had they beaten France, it would have been, to your amazing point about that title, it would have been the most remarkable basketball accomplishment maybe that I'd ever seen. And we were this close to it being possible.
I thought, what you were saying earlier before you hopped on, Bill, you were making a similar point too, but Sam was talking about Joker's gravity, because he wasn't super efficient tonight. He had 17 points on 17 shots, and he didn't make a 3, but 11 assists. And they, especially in the first 3 quarters, when they made all of their threes and they were shooting the lights out, a lot of really clean looks, because they were collapsing on Joker and trying to double him, and they were spending a lot of energy and effort on him. And even when you look at these numbers, Team USA had a much better shooting night. It kind of floored me that they shot 57% from the floor and 50% from 3. And Serbia only shot 38% from 3. And I'm like, wait a minute, how is that possible? Why were they even in the game? And it was that fourth quarter really went
I think Jokic got tired. Yeah. And I don't know if you guys hit this, but one of the sort of small details that I thought was amazing, because I haven't noticed all the gray in LeBron's beard to this point, was LeBron. It wasn't just LeBron, it was Embiid too, and some other guys just banging into Jokic in that fourth quarter and trying to wear him down and trying to sap that energy from him. And at least to my eyes, Nikola ran out of energy. And when he's the engine, and the minute he wasn't 100% him and he was tired, that Serbian team started to miss shots, and that 3-point percentage started to drop and drop and drop.
Yeah, I look at all of the different American players who at some point or another guarded Jokic in this game, right? LeBron had stretches on him late in the game.
Oh, yeah,
he obviously did. Bam, AD. Durant got switched on to him a couple times. Team USA could just throw all-star after all-star after all-star at him. And he was, I don't want to say he was alone, because his teammates played obviously very well. Bogdanovic was incredible. But he didn't have that luxury of having all of these weapons is a ploy against whoever was the star for Team USA. He couldn't throw 5 stars at Stephen Curry when Stephen Curry was making 9 threes. I do think he wore down, right? Like, I think that's pretty obvious just given the stakes of this game. It's not a 48-minute game like it is in the NBA, but every second felt so essential, felt so pressure-packed that by the end, you've played 38 minutes. It feels like you've played 138 minutes.
And to your point, Sam, there's no minutes off because you're right. They're throwing. I mean, there's not a single minute where you're not facing some guy who's a superstar who's big and physical and can foul you 2 or 3 times and switch off you if he needs to.
It's kind of like a supercharged version of what we saw in the Wolves series, right? Because he was complaining in the Wolves series about having to face those 3 bigs and Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert and then also Karl Anthony Towns. Well, Team USA obviously has more of those guys and they're better. And there wasn't a minute that you could take off. By the way, just as a quick aside, when you were talking about how every moment felt so crucial because it's a 40-minute game and not a 48-minute game, make the NBA games 40 minutes. Our 45 basketball games are absolutely amazing. I love it.
It's like soccer. It's so quick.
Here's why it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen because the union would never let it happen because you need 48 minutes so the bench players can get paid.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And get your points and get your stats. Did you guys talk Jason Tatum? Did you guys already do the Tatum thing?
We did a little Tatum. We can do some more Tatum. We haven't gotten to Embiid yet. I'm glad you're here for that. Okay. But Tatum, I was saying, Bill, that I only wanted him to play in a loss, not in a victory. So I was okay with them not going through that. That way he could just go, don't blame me. I didn't even get in. It is a little curious, though. We were trying to work through, like, you know, what it is about this team, the construction, what Kerr is thinking, that Tatum really has become, you know, wing version of Halliburton. I get why they're not playing Halliburton. The other one's a little stranger.
I mean, my sort of takeaway I'll go back and listen. I'll be interested in what you guys thought. My sort of two parts was, if you want to be generous to Steve Kerr, and that isn't really my inclination right now, maybe his rotations had to do with playing Embiid in some limited minutes, and he was so good that he just altered from the plan. But the other thing is, the Tatum conversations that we've had, because this is not the first time, have felt really academic. I mean, we talked about him. We need something to talk about. It's interesting, but it didn't matter. I know Steve Kerr is lucky because he won because he needed to win. But there would have been some serious questions to answer if you don't play Jason Tatum again after everything and you lose to Serbia. I mean, again, goal number 1, don't lose because you don't want to lose. But I think it's such a big story that Steve Kerr is lucky to miss and has a lot more explaining to do. If a couple of those Serbian players hit a couple of those threes at that sort of midway point of the fourth quarter where you felt the momentum shift, if one of those go in and we're in an alternate universe where Serbia wins, I don't have a good explanation for
Sam, Bill knows this about me. And, you know, people who listen to our show, watch our show, know that I tend to be the one who defends Steve Kerr on this show a lot.
Yes.
It's hard for me I'm starting, you guys have really kind of talked me into it. Cause like today he did not
talk to you into it.
I mean, he talked me into it. You guys talked me into it today, especially. I was like, this is not, I mean, like Steve Kerr, there are going to be a lot of questions about Steve Kerr, whether or not they win this whole thing or not. I think they will. I think, you know, as you mentioned, this was probably the gold medal game, but still, I mean, I don't know what he was doing today.
I'll defend Steve Kerr in the broad sense. I think he is almost an underrated NBA head coach. It's hard to be underrated as a head coach when you've won 4 championships.
Yeah.
But I do think like there's a certain group of Warriors fans who just look at the Warriors and say, why doesn't Steph run 45 pick and rolls every game? Like the things that Steve Kerr does work over a full season and over a sustained era. He's very good at managing egos. He's very good at building a system and getting players to buy into it. That's not what coaching Team USA is, right? Like coaching Team USA is a 6-game sport.
You have all the biggest egos on the planet on one team. Why isn't
you don't have time? You don't have time to build a family and like an atmosphere. And I think Eric Spoelstra, the guy sitting next to him, is more, to Sam's point, is more equipped for just a quick hit assassin. These aren't very many games.
Okay, but so this brings up another good point, because I heard you and Ashley talking about how Spo should be the coach. You know, Ashley wanted Spo to be the coach. He's sitting right next to him. It's not like they're not talking. How come nobody went? Or maybe they did and he's ignoring it. That doesn't make sense.
How that goes. Because Steve Kerr's like, cool, Eric, I love what you're saying. Tatum, I'm going to have you sit there for a while. I mean, he's going to do what he's going to do.
It's similar to what it is with the players, right? Like in the NBA, Kevin Durant's going to take 25 shots in a big game. He's not going to do that in a Team USA setting because everybody around him is just as good as he is. It feels like you sort of dilute your coaches when you have, you know, okay, it's Steve Kerr, 4 championships, Eric Spoelstra, 2 championships. Mark Few, one of the best coaches in college basketball history. Like, you go down the list and you have all of these people who have all of these ideas to contribute. It's really hard for any one voice to win out. Whereas I think in the NBA, like, Nick Nurse is the king of this. Aaron mentioned this in chat earlier. Spo is very good too, where it's like, it's the second quarter, we're down 11. I'm going to do this one really weird thing that I'm just pulling out on the spot. And by halftime, that 11-point lead is going to be a 2-point lead. It's much harder to do that in a Team USA setting.
Also, I think it's worth, if we're having this conversation, Spoelstra comes from a Pat Riley culture, and I covered that team. Some coaches want their assistants to stand up, be super. It's more of a hierarchy in Miami. And that's how Spo learned, and that's how his assistants operate. Not that they don't have insight, but it's a one-man show, and it's not really a collaboration in the moment. At least it isn't for Spoelstra when he's the Heat coach, and it wasn't for him when he worked his way from the video room to be an assistant for Riley. So maybe he's also maybe he is muscle memory trained by Pat Riley, who I can tell you, having covered him, is a frightening man. I'm sure he's a very nice man, but he is there's a coach, and my role is a little more in the background when I'm not the head coach.
Not the best day for Steve Kerr. They escape. He escapes. They're going on to the gold medal game. I do want to bring up a guy that we haven't really talked about yet, who did have a fantastic day, easily his best day of this tournament, and frankly, maybe one of his best basketball games ever, and that's Joel Embiid. There are a lot of people who were super. I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic here. He scored 70 points in a game against the Spurs before he got injured. He's never made it out of the second round. Was today the best game of Joel Embiid's career?
I don't know if I would go best. I'd probably go biggest.
No.
Most important?
No.
Most important, I think, is reasonable.
Is it? I don't know. Yeah,
I mean,
I guess I'm going to gently push back.
A lot of people about Joel Embiid.
No, push back, but let me just make the case, because a lot of people were super down on him. They sat him against South Sudan. He has 19 points. He was 8 for 11 from the floor. He made 2 of his 3 threes. He had critical big shots. He had a big block in the fourth quarter, along with Steph Curry. Steph was the number one reason why they pulled this game out. I'd say he was 1A.
Here, I agree. And by the way, he was awesome against Jokic. I mean, he was fierce.
Yes.
It's going to sound like a put down. It's not. If the best game of your career is helping the USA win a game, it should never even be close. You're not having big enough games. I mean, if you're good enough to make Team USA have, it's maybe you're. And by the way, I'll ask you guys. So Chuck comes on Embiid's Teammates podcast, and we played it earlier, John, and says basically he's out of shape and he doesn't play well enough. And since that game against Brazil today, Embiid's been amazing. Are you buying the idea that maybe that Chuck's comments and criticisms were actually a wake up call for Embiid, because he's been a different guy the last couple games? Those guys don't like getting criticized by Chuck.
I don't know that the criticism kicked him into gear so much as he might have just needed several games to not get in shape, but like kind of get a rhythm.
That's fair.
I know that we really shouldn't look at a Team USA game because, Bill, you're right. Like, if you need all of these other great players around you to be great in a big setting, that might not be translatable to the NBA. That being said, look at the NBA roster he now has with Tyrese Maxey and Paul George. We didn't really have much evidence that he could be this good, even with other supporting stars in the NBA. Getting this today makes me feel slightly better about like game 6 of a second round series at Madison Square Garden, where you're down 3-2 and like maybe Maxey has it, maybe doesn't. Maybe Paul George has missed a couple of big threes. Like, in the heat of the moment today, regardless of who was around him, Joel Embiid did his job. Like, Joel Embiid is probably the second biggest reason that Team USA won this game. We would not be playing for gold. And I say we because we are all American. We would not be playing for gold if Joel Embiid was not on the team. It's kind of that simple. That doesn't mean we go into next season thinking like, okay, Joel has it. He's going to go into the playoffs totally locked in, and they're the championship favorite. But it does mean if we get to another big game setting where he's fallen short a lot of times, we can feel just a little bit better about him meeting the moment.
John, do you feel better? You're a Sixers fan. Do you feel optimism coursing through your Sixers veins.
No, I know, you know me. I never feel optimism about the Sixers. That would be foolish. And when you were saying, like, you know, if winning a game against Serbia that you're absolutely supposed to win, and not even for a medal, just to get to the gold medal game is the biggest moment of your career. You haven't had enough big moments. That's my point entirely. He hasn't had enough big moments. He's never made it out of the second round. It would be great if this like catapults him into that conversation. He won an MVP. It's awesome. He's a very good basketball player. I love watching him. Also, his commando role after that blow by dunk, where he just like dropped it, like give that man a gold medal for the best floor routine, because that was exceptional. But he needs to have these moments, and he's just had too few of them. Maybe it's a little bit of what Sam said, that it took him a second to get going, because that first game, they didn't really use him against Serbia. Then the
rhythm thing is interesting.
Yeah, they started using him in the Puerto Rico game. They used him in the Brazil game. They definitely used him today. So we'll see what happens in the France game. We should look forward, though. How do we feel about this? Is the matchup that I think a lot of us wanted. It's going to be a fun storyline clash. Embiid they're going to boo the living hell out of him. He's going to play the villain. It's going to be super fun. But we didn't give Serbia a chance, and they almost pulled it off. Do we give France a chance?
I'll say this. We didn't give Serbia a lot of a chance, but I'll repeat what I said earlier. If anyone's going to beat USA, it's a team that has the best player on earth, who his unique ability offensively to do all the things that you guys have talked about, we've talked about, can enhance everybody.
So not Rudy Gobert?
Look, if Gobert can get more than 4 minutes, I'm taking France. No, I think that Jokic was the key reason that Serbia was in this. And I know Bogdanovic hit shots, other guys hit shots, but Wemby's going to be that guy someday. I think we all think. It's just not going to be on Saturday. It's going to be in 4 years or 8 years or 4, 8, and 12 years. And I think that if this Serbia team hitting the number of shots they did until they sort of cooled off, with Jokic playing the Jokic ways, can't beat America when you're up 17. I don't think this France team does. I think this was the game for USA to lose. And congratulations, France, on the silver medal. But I would be shocked. I would have been shocked if Serbia won, but I could construct an argument. I can't construct an argument for France.
Yeah, Bill, I'm totally with you on that. I mean, the fundamental reason that Serbia almost won this game more than anything was that they had a wild shooting variance game, right? Like when you make 10 threes in the first half, I don't care who you have on your team. Like you're going to have a very good chance to win.
But Jokic created a lot of those easy looks, right?
Absolutely. Like you are right. Like, Jokic being there created a lot of those looks. But like you can randomly just make 10 threes in a half. But that's really rare, and I don't think that France is going to do that, right? Like if we assume France shoots at broadly the level that it has, this is going to be a walkover. Like, I'm sorry. Like, great job, France. Way to get here. You probably should have lost to Japan. I don't know what you should be here, but that's not.
Oh my God, the home cooking. The home cooking. That's
they
so
should have
true.
lost to Japan. That was absolutely inexcusable. Before we wrap, can Wemby pull a Joker?
I don't think yet. No. I don't.
Well, because also I think definition. It's not going to be on offense. He's not going to do the things on offense that Jokic did. Could he have a game where he has 8 blocks and like Team USA shoots badly from 3?
Right. That's what it's got to be both.
Like, I don't think he can nearly impact the game in its entirety in the way that Jokic did. But I do think like defensively, he's so special that sure, why not? Like maybe he does block 4 shots in the first half and Team USA misses a bunch of threes. Remember, we did play France in the gold medal game 3 years ago. And France very nearly won that game. Like, this is the peril of playing.
That roster wasn't very good, though. No, that was a much worse roster.
I agree.
There's always the chance that USA goes 4 of 21 or something from it. But outside of like crazy variance, I don't think Wemby is at a point yet where he can do what the best player on earth and the guy that's won, is it 3 of the last 4 MVPs or whatever it is, has done. And almost, it's just Wemby can be that guy, but he's not that guy now.
That being said, we talked about the home cooking a little bit.
That's true. I mean, some home cooking. That is true.
Like, how does LeBron have 3 fouls in 4 minutes? Like,
yeah.
LeBron has been ejected. 3 minutes in.
They're going to have to eject half the team, and then they'll still have 6 other guys to deal with. Before we go, one last thing. We were talking about this in the pre-show, Sam, and I'm curious on your take, and Bill, you jump in here too, but are they going to play Rudy? Like, you would think that there's matchups where you'd be like, oh, Rudy makes sense, right?
If you think about like what theoretically made France special at the beginning of this tournament, it was the thought of the double-barreled rim protection of Rudy and Victor, right? Like, I know they've said they've wanted to go small. in these specific matchups, it made sense. And obviously they won these last 2 games, which were obviously like those were not gimmies. Like those were hard games. They had to make tough strategic choices. I think if you're trying to win in an upset, and it would be, I don't know, I'm going to guess Team USA is favored by 20, give or take. When you're that big of an underdog, I just don't think it makes sense to go away from the one thing that gives you the highest upside, which is your path to winning this game is that Rudy and Wemby totally wall off the paint, and then Team USA misses all of its threes. Is that likely? No, but that's a path that I understand. And if I were France, I would be playing for that path.
I will just say that that's really logical and really smart. And they have a coach who basically undercut Ruby's "I got hand surgery" lie or whatever. I don't know that he's thinking rationally, maybe correctly, but it's a weird look. I love the French people. I was just in France, but it's also French. The drama.
Yeah, it is so French. It really is. That's very funny. If Rudy doesn't play or doesn't play well, he should stay there because Draymond will not let him hear the end of it the entire NBA season. He should or move to like a non-extradition country or go on the lam and change his name or whatever, because that'll be the end for Rudy Gobert. This is the end for this show. This was very fun. Bill, thank you for jumping in after HQ. Sam, thank you for joining us as always. The 3 of us are going to be back on Saturday right here live on YouTube following the gold medal game. Team USA against France. It's going to be a fun one. There's going to be plenty to talk about. We'll get into all of it, but come back and join us. We see everybody who's in the comments. We thank you for doing that. Abby Jackson, especially. A lot of fun stuff that you threw in there. Let's do it again on Saturday. But for now, for Bill and Sam, I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks for watching Beyond the Arc.